welcome. We are going to be talking about reaching younger donors today, Gen Z and Millennials specifically, because Gen Alpha is a little too young to donate for now, so don't need to worry about them yet. But if you have anything that you're already doing to try to attract younger donors, feel free to drop that in the chat. That's what people are doing right now. But let's go ahead and get started. And yes, Charlotte, this is being recorded, so let's get into it. So quick intro, my name's Isa. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager here at Feathr. And my goal is just to help nonprofits like yours understand how to leverage digital marketing tools and strategies and tactics to better reach the people that you're trying to reach and create those sort of meaningful long-term relationships with your audience. So whether that's getting donors, recruiting volunteers, getting people to come to community events, whatever that looks like for you, digital marketing can help with that. And so I like to try to just break down the ways that you can make those goals happen using the tools that are available to you. So let's get in. So like I said, this is being recorded. So look out for the recording and the slide deck in your email inbox tomorrow. We'll be sending that out. Feel free to drop questions in the chat throughout the presentation. I'm going to try to visit the chat throughout just to kind of keep up with the questions, but definitely drop questions in. And if someone asks a question and you feel like you have an answer or an insight that might be helpful for them, feel free to drop that in as well. This is meant to be conversational, and obviously you all are in the weeds doing the work, and I would love to hear from you, what's working for your organizations too. So definitely engage in the chat and share any ideas that you have too. So quick agenda items. So we are going to start off by looking at this new landscape of giving. So basically the fact that Gen Z and Millennials are now becoming your main target audience, and you have to kind of adapt to that and understand what that means for, how you've gotten used to marketing and how you need to do marketing in the future to sort of appeal to these newer, younger people. Then we're going to talk about specific tactics and strategies for securing these younger donors and supporters. So we'll get into some of the platforms you can use, some of the channels, messaging, techniques and strategies, best practices, things like that. And then we'll talk about things that you can continue doing if they're working for you. So this includes things like direct mail, email marketing, things that you're probably already doing, but you might think like, oh, does this work for younger generations? Is this future-proofed? And so we'll get into why there are certain things that you should continue doing if they're working for you. We're going to talk about going beyond donations because, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, not everyone will become a donor. And so it's important to have options for people to engage with your cause and to support you, even if they don't have the money to give to you right now. And so we'll get into some specific ways that you can offer avenues for people to help you, even if they can't donate. And then we will go, I think it's important to talk about the fact that it's an election year and it can be a little tricky for nonprofits to do fundraising effectively during an election year just because of media saturation and email fatigue and all of those things. So I want to get into that a little bit at the end and give you some tips for, how you can make that easier and how you can kind of cut through all that noise. And then last but not least, I compiled some resources to kind of help you all get started. They're related to a lot of the things I'll be talking about, but just sort of meant to expand on those ideas and provide you with something to kind of revisit as you're looking through the presentation. And if you want to kind of start, setting up some campaigns and acting on some of this, those resources should be pretty helpful for, helping you create strategies. So let's dive in. So, like I said, Millennials and Gen Z are the future of your cause. They're the future of your organization. This is just a fact. Millennials have surpassed boomers as the largest generation in the US. Gen Z is close behind. So the reality is just that this is the group of people that you now have to be targeting. And I think it's also worth noting that, Gen Z and Millennials have a kind of a unique lived experience. And I think, all generations think this about themselves, but, Gen Z and Millennials have in real time, firsthand experienced a global pandemic that was the worst in a century, a global recession, social unrest, a major climate crisis. And I think Gen Z in particular has grown up surrounded by this in a way that millennials even haven't. And so I think it creates kind of a jadedness and a pessimism and a lack of trust in institutions and things like that are creating some of the challenges that you're probably seeing when you're trying to appeal to these younger people. But at the same time, I think this sort of like global awareness and insight into what's happening because of, access to information and social media makes it so that young people are very invested in social issues. People want a voice, they want a platform, they do care, but activism just looks different than it did for their parents or their grandparents. And so, you have to keep that in mind and find new ways to meet them where they're at. And so we'll get into a lot of that today. And I think, like I've said a couple times already, you have to be open to other ways to engage them in case they don't donate. So that's key, because whether we like it or not, this is, the future of nonprofit marketing is appealing to people who may or may not donate, but are willing to support your cause in the ways that they can. So tapping into that is key. So I created a couple of kind of like personas here just to sort of break down some of the specific qualities that differentiate millennials from Gen Zers. I think we kind of tend to, maybe you do this, maybe you don't, but I think we tend to think of like younger donors and younger generations as this sort of like massive group of people that includes both of these generations. And while there is some overlap between the two, I think it's important to understand that there are also some big differences in terms of the platforms that they use, the type of messaging that resonates. And so I just wanted to talk through a little bit of that so you can kind of think about that as you're creating campaigns. If you have the budget and the bandwidth to get very pinpointed in your social media campaigns and your advertising, it's helpful to know what works for, a 36-year-old versus a 22-year-old. And ultimately that will help you be more effective. So let's get into Millennial Matt. So let's say he's 36 years old, although he could be anywhere between 28 and 43 years old. He spends an average of 6.5 hours online every day, primarily browses on his smartphone, but often makes purchases on a computer. It was funny for me to put this presentation together as a millennial myself, because that one hit. I was like, I do a lot of browsing on my phone. I'll almost decide to buy something on my phone, but sometimes I'm like, I need to get my laptop out to actually make this purchase, because something about like the bigger screen makes it more, it just feels more familiar to me. And so that one resonated. I can validate that for sure. And that's a key difference with Gen Z, where they make most of their purchases on mobile. Millennials will use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. They prefer long form content like detailed videos and podcasts. I feel like we kind of grew up with like a lot of YouTube videos and things like that. So definitely long form content can work for millennials, although we all are also receptive to shorter form content. And I think that because that's becoming more common through platforms like TikTok and Instagram, short form content is also highly impactful for both Gen Z and millennials. Millennials are also likely to convert through, traditional online ads and social media marketing. So those kind of traditional advertising practices might work a little better for millennials. They're more receptive to that. And then millennials tend to be more politically minded and politically active. And I think this comes back to that point about, millennials are still kind of on that cusp of like, the world wasn't completely on fire for part of our lives. And then, so like, I think there's a little bit more trust and belief in the institutions and systems than with Gen Z, where they're just like, what's happening? And so there is a difference there in terms of sort of like political engagement, partisan politicking, things like that. Okay, let's get into Gen Z Gina. So 22 years old, although she could be anywhere between 12 and 27. So an obvious point there is that people who are 12 years old are probably not donating to your cause. So, part of Gen Z is ready to become donors potentially if they have the funds. Part of them aren't. But obviously they will get older and become a huge part of your donor base. So they spend an average of 10.6 hours online daily, so quite a bit more than millennials. They're twice as likely to make an online, so Gina's twice as likely to make an online purchase via mobile than Matt. So like I said, Gen Zers, they will click purchase or donate, they will convert on mobile at higher rates. And so we'll get into that more in a minute, but that is like the number one reason why you need to have a mobile optimized website, content, everything needs to look good on mobile. Otherwise, you're just going to fall behind. Gina uses video-based platforms like Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok. So there's some overlap there with millennials, but not entirely. She's also more likely to purchase or convert via TikTok or Instagram. So the sort of like conversions happening on social media platforms is a big one. And then she's more likely to reject traditional advertising tactics. So, she might convert more easily through social media videos, like a lot of you were dropping in the chat, doing sort of shorter, impactful storytelling videos, things like that, or influencer marketing, which we'll get into in a minute as well. So what do Matt and Gina have in common? Because while there are differences, I think it's important to realize that like young people do have a lot in common that does make it easier to sort of, if you don't have the budget to get super targeted in your campaigns and you just want to, target younger donors, there are ways that you can appeal to a broader age range by just considering what they have in common. So less money to give than previous generations. This is a huge one. As we all are aware, rent, costs of living, prices of everything have gone up. And in most cases, wages have not gone up proportionally to sort of, support that. And so a lot of millennials and Gen Zers are kind of living, like struggling to make ends meet and struggling to just be at baseline and don't have a whole lot of extra money to give out to causes, even if they're causes that they care about. A lot of millennials have student debt, a mortgage if they're lucky. And so there's just a lot happening there. And it's difficult to kind of find an excuse to give money that you don't feel you have to a cause, no matter how much you care. So that's a big factor. Like I said before, less trust in institutions and partisan politicking. And so that's just kind of, you have to lean into transparency, authenticity, really creating personal connections with people because they're not going to just give you money because you say that you're an organization that needs money. Reassuring them that their impact is real is very effective for millennials and Gen Zers alike. They prefer to give locally and to orgs that they feel that personal connection with or somebody that, a friend or a peer has recommended. Young people are also very adept at online giving and purchasing, which is kind of funny because I feel like in the past, previous generations were more wary of the online giving platforms and technology itself, but very trusting in the institutions asking for donations. And now that's kind of been flipped on its head. And so young people are very trusting of technology, which makes it really easy to like scale giving, but they're less trusting of your organization. And so that's sort of the catch. Both generations prefer video content, and they also, another interesting point is they place equal value on all of their assets, right? So this includes time, money, their social connections, leadership skills, other job skills, ideas that they might have, like creativity, basically. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, sort of some ideas for leveraging that and giving people opportunities to contribute beyond giving money. Okay. So some general tips before we get into just strategies that work for younger generations. I think an important thing to remember is that it's never too late to try something new. I think a lot of the time, especially with, trying to appeal to younger donors and maybe, getting on a platform that feels unfamiliar or new, it can feel like you're late to the game or that you don't know what you're doing and it's too late to start. But it's actually the opposite. Like if you don't start doing these new things that are proven to work, if you figure out how to do them well, you will fall behind. And so I think rather than feeling behind and feeling like hesitant to start things, just try things that you're hearing work. Stop something if it's not working, but definitely don't be afraid to try new things because it's just the only way forward. Also research what works for your organization. So, this could look like focus groups, asking young people that you know personally, like what resonates with them. If you yourself are a young person doing marketing for your organization, think about what would resonate with you and do that. That's super effective. We have instincts about what works for other people our age in terms of messaging and mediums, so lean into that if you can. Audience segmentation is another great way to figure out what's working. So, some messaging might resonate with a certain group and not another. So data-driven marketing is really a great way to sort of see what's working and what's not. And then building relationships. So the third point here, just building relationships is ultimately what converts. So like we're going to talk about a lot of specific strategies today, but I think the thing that I want you to view it through a lens of building relationships over time. So starting with awareness, starting with bringing new people into the fold, educating them about your cause, educating them about the issues that you work with, and then nurturing them toward becoming a supporter. That's going to be the thing that's most impactful for you. And then, like I've said several times already, accept that not everyone will become a donor. You have to be open to other ways that young people can support your cause. Okay, so let's get into the first thing that you absolutely must do. So make your website and your content mobile friendly. It can take less than a second for a new web visitor to form an opinion about your organization based on your homepage or your donate page. And those first impressions are mostly design or UX related, especially for these younger generations that grew up in a digital first world. So they're expecting things to be seamless and easy. If you have an app, it should work well. If you have a homepage, it should look good. And so, these are just really important things to make sure that you have down before you're doing more complex strategies. So if you feel like your website could use some work, start there, optimize that. Start with your homepage, and because a lot of people will find you through search engines and get to your homepage, and then improve other high impact pages kind of as you go, like donate pages, event pages, things like that. But yeah, this will impact how people see you moving forward. So if somebody visits your site because they're interested in your cause, but then they are like, this organization doesn't really have things together, I don't trust what I'm seeing, then any future marketing you do to them might be wasted because they don't trust, the legitimacy of the website, or they don't feel like you guys are sort of like doing what you need to be doing to stay current. So that's a super important first step. Creating messaging that resonates. So I think that this is a really important thing to talk about. So like we've said, like younger generations require certain types of messaging when it comes to like authenticity and transparency and certain needs in order to even like consider giving to your organization. And so I think that, thinking about the asks you're making is really important. It's not just about the mediums where you're reaching people, but it's what they're actually seeing when they interact with your organization. So one easy sort of low-hanging fruit is to consider asking for smaller amounts in appeals targeted at younger donors. So if you are segmenting things and running targeted campaigns at very young donors, you could, ask for $5 instead of 20. And another important point is that if you are suggesting a certain amount on your ads or in your emails, make sure that when they click through to the donate page or whatever page they're getting to, that it's consistent. So if you have kind of like a default setting in the donate section, that like selects the amount, make sure that amount matches what you suggested in the ad or the email that led them there. So if you say donate $5 in your ad, but then they get there and the default's 20, that might be off-putting. And then be sure to match emotional storytelling with hard facts in your marketing. This goes a long way because, again, emotional storytelling does have a place, but I think a lot of the time it can feel vague and not as trustworthy as numbers and cold hard facts. And so just some examples here, like a specific amount of money a week feeds a family for a specific amount of time. So just get specific with impact statements. 1 in 4 women is a victim of domestic violence. So statistics are very impactful too. And then, like I said, transparency and impact goes a long way. And a lot of you probably release annual impact statements. And so I just wanted to include a couple that I thought were really cool, visually appealing. And another thing to do is not just to publish the impact statement on your website and hope people see it, but you can run advertising campaigns to guide people to it, and so really kind of promote the impact report as a marketing tactic to keep people trusting you and engaged. And if somebody didn't give, but then they see a campaign that you're running showing the impact of a initiative you just had last year, end of year, Giving Tuesday, something like that, they might be more inspired to give because they see that there really is impact there. So this is just an example from the Innocence Project. So they just have a few stats here about, the impact that donations had. And then this one, I'll get into this example a little bit more on the next slide, but this was a couple of influencers that teamed up to raise money to remove trash from the ocean. And so this is just a little snippet from that of their impact statement. And whenever possible, like I said this before, but involve young people in your marketing and communications work to make sure the messaging hits the mark. That's a really easy way to make sure you're doing things right. Test out different CTAs to see what works. On the last slide where I've compiled those resources, I included a resource about CTAs for nonprofits and some recommendations there to help get you started. And then get creative with the language that you're using in your ads on your donate page. So I wanted to use the same Team C's example from the last slide because I think what they did here is really cool. every $1 is one less pound of trash in the ocean. And so instead of asking people to donate a dollar amount, they asked them to select the number of pounds of trash they wanted removed from the ocean, which I think is super creative and effective. I'm like, okay, I would definitely be likely to give more if it's phrased that way or sort of posed that way. And so I think, think of ways that you could apply this. If $5 a week feeds, provides 5 meals to a child, if you're a food bank or homeless services organization, maybe put it in those terms on your donate page to kind of get people thinking, okay, it's not just dollars, but this is actually resulting in meals. How many meals do I want to give a child versus how many dollars do I want to give to this organization? Those are different questions. So with different answers. Okay, next step is meeting donors where they are. So this is all about, building trust, finding them where they are, cutting through the noise with multi-channel marketing, starting with audience expansion campaigns. So, geofencing is a great one. This is basically the ability to serve ads on mobile devices to people based on where they are, what physical location they're in. So Feathr offers geofencing as a campaign type for expanding your audience. And I included just a couple of examples here of, types of locations that you could geofence. So if you're trying to reach younger donors, you might geofence college campuses, you might geofence schools to reach either like high school age kids or parents of younger children. Sporting events and shopping centers are also good ones because the sort of implication there is that somebody might have disposable income if they bought a ticket to the events or if they're shopping. So they might have money to give to an organization like yours. And then I just included here a couple of visuals from a Feathr customer that ran a geofencing campaign for last year's Giving Tuesday. They were doing a holiday book drive, and so they targeted the Asheville Mall. And you can just see sort of the map visual here. And this is one of the ads that they used in that campaign. And as you can see here, there's obviously a Barnes and Noble at the mall that they were geofencing, which is cool. So like someone might see this ad and think, oh yeah, I actually do want to donate books. Maybe they don't have any on hand, but they're shopping anyway, and they actually could go to Barnes and Noble, buy a book, and donate. So yeah, really cool example of geofencing, a place where you're likely to hit people that might be likely to donate. And then continuing on this point of meeting donors where they are through multi-channel, you want to do keyword research to inform your SEO strategy and search keyword campaigns when you're trying to appeal to younger donors. I've also included a resource on SEO strategy for nonprofits at the end. But yeah, this is a great strategy for just getting on people's radar. And, like I said, a lot of young people will find you initially through search engine. So you want to make sure that you are bidding for the right keywords and creating content that places you as close to the top as possible so people are finding you. And then, obviously expanding your audience, getting in front of new eyes is great, but then you want to build on that awareness through retargeting campaigns, social media advertising, email marketing, all of those things to sort of nurture people toward a conversion. So I have a couple of ads here. Sorry, you can't see the bottom one because I'm in front of it, but these are from another Feathr customer, Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin. So they built these ads as part of a donate campaign at the end of last year. And so as you can see here, this one is a little bit more sort of like early on, educational, sort of click through to our website to learn more. And then this one is about actually making a donation. So with younger people, you want to keep telling them your story, educating them about the cause, sharing those high impact stories, share volunteer experiences. And then once you've built trust, make a direct appeal, like we talked about, using high impact, direct language statistics, all of that. Okay, so let's get into social media. I feel like this can be a beast for a lot of people, understandably. So I'm going to try to break it down in terms of what you can do to appeal to both Gen Z and millennials. And then I have some tips for appealing to each one if you do sort of like a more segmented strategy. And then a couple of slides about TikTok, specifically influencer marketing and things like that. So, so like I said, social media, one size does not really fit all. You can try to make it fit all, but it's not going to be as effective. And so first of all, you want to run a combined approach of paid and organic social. So Feathr has lots of paid social tools that help you run your social media campaigns under the same roof as your other digital marketing and ad campaigns. So that kind of centralizes all of your data and makes things easier to visualize. And then, like I said, if you can't run pinpointed campaigns for millennials and Gen Z, and you kind of are just doing one big campaign, here are some tips for sort of a general campaign to appeal to both. So you want to sort of focus on the cusp of both generations, which is around 18 to 34. And that allows you to kind of reach those like younger adults and also slightly older adults, but all of whom can make purchasing decisions. And so both Gen Z, everyone in this age group loves instant gratification. So again, make sure that impact statements are there, messaging is clear. And then leveraging social media networks that they have in common would be important here. So Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook are big ones that both Gen Z and millennials tend to use. And then I added a link here for Facebook fundraising tools. So this is kind of some tools that Facebook offers to nonprofits that are eligible to help make it easier for them to raise money on Facebook. So this includes things like making it easier for people to share your fundraiser pages with their friends. If you're doing a Facebook Live, you can add a donate button in the live video, or you can add a donate button sort of on your Facebook page so people don't have to leave Facebook in order to donate to your cause. So just kind of making things, again, more mobile friendly, more seamless, so that people aren't having to bounce around the web to like give to you. It's a lot more likely people will convert if it's straightforward and they can stay on the site that they're already on. So Facebook fundraising tools offers a lot of that for you. So once I send this slide deck out, you can sort of click through and see if you're not already aware of this or using it. Check out if you're eligible, and it doesn't hurt to apply and see if you can use some of those tools to your advantage. Okay, let's get into social media tactics specifically for millennials. So if you are able to run these more segmented campaigns, keep in mind that millennials are a much easier generation to market to in some ways than Gen Z. They're on the most prominent social media networks. They prefer to consume multiple forms of content. So that kind of, the world is your oyster in terms of what formats you use to appeal to them. So videos, podcasts, written content like blog articles, things like that can all work for millennials. And all millennials are old enough to make purchasing decisions. So whether or not we have the funds to give is a different question, but we're all of buying age. And so making a donation is possible. So you don't have to worry about kind of splitting things with Gen Z, where like half of the generation isn't of purchasing age yet. And then millennials have a slightly longer attention span than Gen Z. So you can kind of try out different things. You can try out longer form content, more so with millennials. Focus on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram in terms of channels. And then you want to test out different content formats, like I said, including long form content, things like that. Social media marketing for Gen Z. So this is a little bit different. You want to make content that cuts straight to the chase, short form content, impact statements, focusing on videos. So millennials and Gen Z like video, but Gen Z, it's a must for appealing to Gen Z. And like we've talked about, mobile optimized content. And you want to zone in on those niche platforms that they're using. So Instagram and YouTube, which are shared with millennials, but then TikTok and Snapchat as well. So I'll get into this in more detail. This is not saying that you have to do TikTok and Snapchat. It might not work for a lot of organizations, but I think it's worth considering if you feel like you have the bandwidth to do it and you're interested in trying it. So we'll get into that in a minute. Also leveraging influencers in your space that have relevance and highly engaged audiences that sort of align with your cause or your mission. And we'll get into that in more detail in a minute. So let's talk about TikTok real quick. So TikToks are typically between 15 and 60 seconds long, so very short form content. You can add music, filters, effects, and edit things relatively easily. So it's a pretty user-friendly app in terms of creating content. The goal with TikTok would be to show the humanity of your cause and your mission through the stories that you're telling. So sharing informational videos about impact, sharing volunteer experiences. I know that I don't use TikTok a ton, but I use it to find information about specific topics. So like if I'm interested in something, I might go to TikTok because I know that I can very quickly consume 10 videos about it with different perspectives and different information. And they might not all be helpful, but there is something about that sort of like a quick consumption of multiple sources that is appealing, even for me as a millennial. And so I think, wherever you can, if you do decide to use TikTok, think about it as a place where people want to go to quickly learn about things that are already interesting to them. And obviously you have the For You page and people can find sort of new content and new interests through scrolling, but a lot of people use it to kind of look up something that they're interested in and get more information. And so, yeah, I think it's a great way to sort of educate people and share stories in a very quick and consumable way. And then TikTok also has an official hub for charities, kind of like that Facebook fundraising tools. It's called TikTok for Good. And there's lots of sort of inspo and examples there on how to use the organic side, excuse that typo, of the platform. And so definitely check out TikTok for Good if you do decide that you want to create a TikTok strategy for your nonprofit. And then I think, again, don't be afraid to try a new strategy, but also be realistic about what you can sustain over time. So, if you're a one-person marketing team, or if you're really strapped for resources, or you don't have the video editing skills or just the time, maybe prioritize other things that might be more impactful for now. But if you do feel confident that this could work for you, or you're just interested in trying it, go for it. I think it's definitely a platform that is impactful and is growing in popularity, and it is a place to reach young people, particularly for awareness, less so for engagement and conversions, but definitely for awareness and education. So go for it if you feel like it could work, but also don't feel like you have to do TikTok if you're afraid that you don't have the resources to sustain it. So, okay, influencer marketing. So let's get into that a little bit. This goes a long way for Gen Z in particular, like I said. And I know that this can sound like this inaccessible channel, like how do I find an influencer, things like that. But micro influencers are people who have just, between 5,000 and 50,000 followers, which is a huge range. So like a micro influencer with 5,000 followers is going to be easier to access and get through to and have more time to give than someone with 50,000 followers. But all of these people will have a lot more access or a lot more free time to potentially work with organizations than macro influencers. So just keep that in mind. And they're a great, like working with micro influencers can be a great combination of sort of high engagement, broad reach with these highly targeted audiences. And so it's a really, really powerful channel if you're able to find someone that aligns with your cause. And so that's the harder part. But if you do have someone in mind whose sort of personal brands and their audience align with your mission, reach out to them via social media, or however, makes sense to reach out to them, and sort of propose a collaboration idea if you have one. And, if it feels organic for their followers, if the mission really does correlate with the things that they normally talk about, or aligns with sort of like their brands, they're going to be more likely to agree to something. So it's always worth a try, highly impactful if you're able to make it happen. And then also, if you do secure an influencer, make sure that you show the impact of their contributions, not only to incentivize them to, continue engaging with you and collaborating, but also to show their audience that things are working and to kind of keep their audience engaged and taking action. And then Feathr also has a tool called Invites that makes it easy to create sort of like tailor-made pages for influencers to share with their audiences. There's customizable dashboards that kind of give your influencer access to, conversions and monitoring the effect that they're having on your campaign. And then you can monitor, especially if you have multiple influencers, for example, you can kind of see, the impact of each one's work and report that internally. And this also works it doesn't have to be, social media influencers. This could be event partners or, sponsors or anyone that you partner with, who, if you have some partners or sponsors coming to like a local community event and you want them to share with their audiences that they'll be there, Invites is a great way to sort of democratize that and scale that for them, provide them with easy pages to share, and then you can kind of collect all of the data on how those pages are performing in one dashboard. So it's a helpful tool. Okay, and then I wanted to share just a few social media benchmarks, and I will check the chat in a minute. I don't know. It looks like some questions are coming in. So I will pause just in a couple of minutes and check the chat. But some social media benchmarks and statistics. So I provided this sort of post type breakdown. This image here is for Facebook specifically. And so 21% of posts are video content, 63% are images, and 16% are other. So this might include things like an organic style, like all text ad or something like that, or a text post. And then you can see here the engagement rates for each one. So yeah, just something to keep in mind if you're doing these types of posts or creating like video ads versus images, just kind of some benchmarks to aim for. And then Facebook and Meta results in an average return on ad spend, so ROAS, of 48 cents for fundraising ads, and TikTok comes in a lot lower at 17 cents. So Facebook is much more impactful in terms of conversions and conversion value than TikTok. But TikTok has the highest organic reach rate. And so lower engagement, but the reach is higher. And so again, that can be really helpful for growing awareness about your cause and your organization. And then 22% of nonprofits utilize UTM codes to see where traffic is coming from. So making sure that, if you are doing a campaign on Facebook and you're doing one on Instagram and LinkedIn, that you have UTM codes, dedicated codes, so that you know where traffic is coming to your website from. And so you can kind of see which channels are actually performing well, put more budget behind a Facebook campaign if it's doing better than Instagram, things like that. So using UTM codes is really crucial for something like this. And I was surprised that that's so low. So definitely use UTM codes where you can to split out your channels and get better reporting on what's working for you. And then this article here just has some more information, some more benchmarks and statistics on nonprofit social media marketing. Okay, so some other strategies that you can try that are sort of outside of the channels that we've just talked about. Gift matching campaigns are a great thing. I'm sure a lot of you have tried that before. These can convert at much higher rates. So 84% of donors are more likely to give if their gift is being matched, and 1 in 3 donors may give a larger gift. And I know for me personally, if it's a gift matching campaign, I do start thinking, okay, if I give 10, it's 20. If I get, it's just a really easy process to like getting to a much higher amount. And so that's a very impactful campaign type that is proven to work better and just gives people that sense that, you're invested in matching their gift as well. And then ramping up recurring gifts. This won't necessarily work for everybody, but Gen Z and millennials are very accustomed to subscription-based models, paying for things monthly versus in one lump sum. And so, you might try out a recurring gift ask. And again, you'd want this to happen only for people who you've established a relationship with. You would not want to ask for recurring gifts to someone who's never donated before. But this can be an interesting thing to try out if you think it might work for you. Okay, so let's get into what I was talking about before, things that you can continue doing if they're working for you. But actually, first, I'm going to quickly visit the chat. Okay, let me take a second here. Lots of comments and questions. Okay. I love TikTok personally, but I'm Gen Z. I've learned a lot about social stuff on there. Yeah, and also I have actually looked up nonprofit marketing tactics and strategies on TikTok as well. So outside of thinking about how you can use TikTok to promote your cause, also just go on TikTok and like see what there is in terms of like recommendations for nonprofits. Like I found a couple of people who had a lot of video content on like ways to reach younger donors, like topics like this. There's content about this on TikTok, again, in that super easy to consume format. So I would recommend, just like going on TikTok as a source of information to learn more about these things. Okay, let's see. TikTok just seems weird to me. That's fair. Okay. Okay, so someone asked, what program do you use to geofence? So you can use Feathr to geofence your audience. It's an audience expansion campaign type within the Feathr platform, and everything happens in there. You select the physical location, you set up the ads, you select your budget, and you can run the campaign completely in Feathr. And obviously, if you find that ads aren't performing well in a certain physical location, you can remove the budget, you can move things around, you can zoom in closer, but you can do geofencing through Feathr. Okay. Also, I will probably have to like download this Q&A, this chat transcript and try to get some of these questions answered after because there's lots. Okay. Do you have a snapshot? Um, do you have a snapshot of these two donor patterns compared side by side? Kate, do you mean just like a slide that has the information I shared at the beginning sort of on the same? I just have those two slides, but we could maybe create a resource. I'm thinking that we should probably actually Feathr should create a resource compiling a lot of this information into something other than a slide deck. So note to self to work with our content creator on that. Yeah, and Emily, I like what you said about the creativity with the wording for that, the Cleaning the Seas campaign. It provides the instant gratification. Like that's so true. Even before hitting donate, you're getting that instant gratification of knowing, how many pounds of garbage are going to be cleaned up. Okay, I'm seeing a couple answers to questions too. Thank you guys. Okay, there's so many questions. This is great, but I'm trying to let's see. Okay, somebody asked, in this political landscape, how would you encourage advocating and donations in the art nonprofits? How do we break through the news cycle to engage? That's a great question. I have a slide dedicated to this at the very end, so I will get into some of the ways that you can break through the noise. It's hard in an election cycle, but it's possible. Multi-channel marketing is a way to do it. Data-driven marketing to see what's working. And leaning into political issues, if that works for you, if that aligns with you, can also work. But we'll get into that more in a minute. Yeah, and a UTM code is basically just like a tracking code that you add to the URL so that the end user will not see anything different. They will just see the page that you're sending them to. But on the back end, it's in the URL, but basically it allows you to segment out the different pages that you have so that you can look at the data later and see, okay, this page that we used as part of this Facebook campaign, which has this UTM code built into it, brought in these web visitors to our site versus this page that had this UTM code. So it's basically just a way of differentiating between the different landing pages that you're using to get people to the different URLs you're using to get people to a specific landing page or a donate page. And most marketing platforms, Feathr offers this, and like most marketing platforms where you're doing email marketing and advertising should offer a way to generate UTM code so that you can do this easily. Okay. It's very easy for people to forget. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Sorry, I know I've missed a ton of questions, but I will try to get back to these either at the end or after the presentation and send some answers as part of the follow-up email tomorrow. But these are great questions. Keep dropping them in. Let's keep going because I don't want to run out of time. Okay, so real quick, direct mail fundraising does work. So, just because this channel doesn't necessarily future-proof your organization, it doesn't mean it's not valuable now. So older people are the ones that will tend to give through direct mail appeals, but older people also tend to give more frequently and they tend to give larger amounts. So we don't want to say goodbye to that anytime soon. We want to keep pulling in those funds while we can. And then, redirecting some of that money into these other marketing campaigns that you're using to target younger donors and younger supporters, even if they don't donate, but kind of building up that base using the funds that are coming in. And so just a couple stats here to support why direct mail fundraising does still work. So donors are 3 times more likely to give online in response to a direct mail appeal than an email. 42.2% of direct mail recipients either read or scan the email they get, or the mail they get, sorry. And then up to 90% of direct mail gets opened compared to only 20 to 30% of emails. So giving does peak when people are older, like it says here. So between ages 61 to 75, a lot of households donate compared to a lower percentage, 60%, among households with younger people. And so that's worth noting, snail mail does work for older people and older people give more. So don't stop doing that. if you're doing it and if it's working. And then email also works really well. And so, the people who receive those, so obviously I just listed some stats about how direct mail can be more impactful than email, but that's because the people who are receiving your direct mail gave you their address, which probably means they're older, which probably means they've given before. So that engagement is just going to be higher. But email is very broadly appealing and broadly impactful for a variety of age groups, and it converts at high rates as well. So I just included a few benchmarks here to kind of aim for if you're doing email appeals for a donation drive, trying to appeal to younger donors through email. You want to be aiming for an open rate between 10 to 17%, click-through rate, aiming for 1%, and then this conversion rate here, 0.1 to 0.25%. So this might sound low, but this is the people who are actually donating from the email. So this is the sort of benchmark for that. And then for unsubscribe rates, you want to make sure you're staying within this range here, and then anything above 1% is dangerous. So if your unsubscribe rate from email appeals or even your email newsletter is above 1%, you want to make sure you revisit your email lists, clean those up, do some segmentation maybe, but you want to make sure that this number is staying lower. Because you can also get blacklisted. It's not just, you don't want to just not be reaching people that are interested in your cause, but you can actually get blacklisted and your emails will not go through. So you want to make sure that you're keeping these numbers at bay. And then real quick, an example of an email fundraising appeal. I pulled this example from another Feathr customer, the Food Bank for Central and Northeast Missouri. They ran this campaign last year as part of an initiative to raise capital for a new pantry that they were opening locally. And so I wanted to just share an email. It's on the next slide. I'll show you guys what the actual template looked like. But they had a 50% open rate, 3% click-through rate, and they raised $13,000 in one morning from this email. So it was a gift match campaign, so that helped. It was a 2x gift match campaign, but it was just such an impactful email. And she sent it out at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, and by noon, they had raised this much money just from one email. So email does convert. Wanted to just include their email template here just so you can kind of see they built this in Feathr. Double My Gift Now was the CTA. I think that's worth noting. That's a good CTA, Double My Gift Now. Looks like they had a video here and just some information about the goal, which was 7 million. And they did hit that goal later in the year, which was exciting to learn about after talking to her earlier in the year when they were sort of in the middle of all of the campaigns. So that email pulled its weight, and then they ran a ton of other emails and advertising campaigns that helped them get to that $7 million goal. Okay, going beyond donations. So, like I've said a couple times, you want to offer ways for people to support your cause, even if they don't have money to give. And so, younger people actually like taking smaller actions before making a larger donation or a larger commitment. And that larger commitment could even be volunteering their time and, volunteering or giving their time. So you want to just offer sort of micro actions that people can take. And that could look like sharing, your cause with a friend or just engaging in some way. And so like those smaller engagements are indicative of interest, even if they don't immediately lead to a huge conversion. And then if you do offer these alternative ways and build those relationships, they are more likely to give long-term, especially once they're in a place where they're financially more able to give. But if they trust you and you have that relationship, that is the place to start. And then I said this earlier, but young people consider all of their assets to be of equal value, which I just think is really interesting. So this could be an opportunity to kind of lean into those other skill sets that young people have that you might need that aren't donations, but they're helpful for your organization in terms of getting donations or optimizing your website. And so some ideas for this would be, working with, so like maybe connecting with institutions or workplaces or universities in your area to kind of connect with younger people through an institution. Because another thing to keep in mind is that young people are also very wary of unpaid labor. And so they're not going to want to be some unpaid social media intern that's overworked and not paid. But there are ways that you can kind of get creative with this and partner up with institutions to kind of offer incentives for people. So I saw a stat about how a lot of Gen Zers are unlikely to volunteer if there's not going to be other people their age at the volunteering event. And so maybe partnering with, workplaces or universities to incentivize group volunteering. And so I know I went to Grace Marketplace, which is a local homeless shelter in Gainesville last year, just to kind of check it out. And there was a group of students from the University of Florida who had all come together as part of, I don't know if it was for a class credit or a program, but they were all there together clearly for the same reason. And they, I think we're going to continue coming every week. And so there are ways to incentivize those group volunteer events. And then, you could also partner with a college or a school or a university to kind of get, if you maybe want to get like IT or design students to help you build a better donate page, or a marketing major who is eager to help you create some video content. So again, be careful with, like overworking unpaid people. Like that is not the goal here. But if you can find cool new ways to partner with organizations and institutions to offer opportunities for young people to engage with you and support you, that's great. And then this is also an interesting one that I've seen come up in a few places. So bringing on young trustees and advisors. I think what often happens at organizations is that there are young people sort of in the weeds doing the marketing work, doing the comms work, but they often don't have the flexibility or the autonomy to really be making decisions, strategic decisions, deciding what to do with budget, onboarding platforms that they think might work. They're kind of limited a lot of times by like outdated mindsets about things, budget constraints that are coming from above them. And so while it's important to have young people in the mix doing the work and, like choosing the messaging that you're putting in your ads and things like that, I think it's also important to put young people in these positions of power, in these advisory positions. And that's not to say that it's your decision on this call to go make that happen, but I think it's worth noting that this is the kind of like systemic change that can have a real impact on your ability to resonate with younger people, both sort of on the marketing level, but just on the organizational level as well. So obviously, younger people are going to have more natural instincts about messaging and what will resonate with their peers. They're more tech savvy, so they can, onboard new platforms, expand your network, bring on software that, some older people on the board might be averse to, but might actually save you time and cost in the long term. So I think it's definitely worth considering bringing younger people onto different types of positions in your organization. And then just some ways to find young trustees if that's something that you're interested in doing. Your local chamber of commerce probably has a young professionals group, so you might start there. If you have a nearby university that has a graduate school, you might have young people who are invested in a specific field or issue, and they have a lot of experience, but they're young and they're willing to, participate and help protect the interests of a cause they care about, like yours. Younger teachers at local schools. And then associations like AFP also offer opportunities to connect with other nonprofit professionals, so you can check those out as well. But yeah, I think bringing in younger people at all levels of decision-making and all levels of the organization is key to future-proofing your organization. So if you can't make that decision yourself, go tell that to your leadership or your board, because it needs to happen. And then the last section here, and then we'll wrap it up. So like I said before, it can be tricky to cut through all of the political fundraising noise that's happening right now. I know I'm getting like 15 text messages a week in all caps, and I'm trying to block them all, but they just keep coming through. So it is a lot of noise, and it can be really difficult to cut through that noise. And so just a couple of sort of tidbits here. In swing states, people are actually reported to give, projected to give 8% less, or 8% less likely to give to nonprofits in 2024. And that jumps to 20% less likely for donors under 45. So again, there's obviously the financial factors involved there that are just there by default. But I just think it's interesting because, while people are more politically attuned and more attuned to social issues on average during a political year like this, an election cycle, donor fatigue is high, inbox fatigue is high. People are just tired of seeing all the noise. And particularly in swing states where you might expect people to be more attuned and more invested in the election and in political issues, they're actually less invested, both in the election and the elections and political issues just because it's oversaturated and they're tired and fatigued. But this also bleeds into their tolerance for marketing and advertising from other brands, other organizations, nonprofits, things like that. It all kind of blends together and it's just too much to sift through. And so I just think that's interesting that swing states actually end up being states that you might not want to put too much budget into targeting because it might just be wasted. Again, test what works for you, see what works for you. But I thought that that was interesting. And then some solutions. Oh, wow. Wow, we just fully zoomed out of here. Well, let me get back in real quick. Okay. Okay, let's just do it this way. Okay, cool. So a couple of solutions for this problem. So reaching people on multiple channels is a way to maximize visibility. So for example, I've been getting a lot of text messages. I haven't surprisingly been getting as many emails about political fundraising. And so just kind of getting on all of the different channels. I'm seeing more political ads on Instagram than on TikTok also. So there are different places where you can kind of slip through and get to people if you just maximize your visibility and show up on different platforms. And then embracing data-driven marketing is key. So monitoring your performance, your advertising performance at the state level can be helpful. Like I just said, if you find that in certain states during this election cycle, your ads are not performing well, it's okay to remove budget and shift that budget elsewhere where ads are performing better. And you can always change things up later, but definitely keep an eye on how your ads and emails are performing during this busy time. And then if ads, like I said, if ads aren't converting, move your budget. It's flexible. And then, you can lean into political issues if that works for you. Rage giving, I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but it is a term for sort of the idea of donating to a cause as a form of political protest. And so that is a thing. It is a thing during an election year. And so a lot of people will be giving. Again, financial constraints and all of these things still limit younger donors in terms of their ability to give, no matter how angry they are or how driven they are to give. And so keeping in mind, leaning into other ways that they can help, other ways that they can engage with you besides just giving money. But, test things out. Again, if leaning into a political issue might work for you, try it out. If it doesn't, stop doing it. So testing everything, A/B testing is the best piece of advice that I can give about all of these things. Okay, that wraps us up. Some resources, like I said, to get started, I included 6 different things here. So once we send this out, you'll have access to this slide here, but I included some inspo for impact reports, an article, a Feathr article about reaching younger donors and some tactics and strategies there, some of which I've talked about today, and there's some other ones in there as well. Some nonprofit CTA recommendations, and then there's a story here about a nonprofit that was able to find some social media influencers and reach out to them and work with them. And it was a really impactful campaign, very cool. So definitely check that out. SEO strategies for nonprofits, and then TikTok for good. So that sort of hub that I mentioned before, that'll give you a little bit of a starting point for your TikTok strategy if you choose to go down that route. Okay, so I will get to some more questions now, but I just wanted to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining. If you liked what you saw here, if you want to learn more about Feathr, how Feathr could help you do a lot of what we talked about today, please drop a 1 in the chat. Feathr has lots of audience expansion campaigns that help you get in front of younger donors and new donors, relevant people for your organization. We have digital advertising campaigns and email marketing that make it easy to nurture those people and get them to convert, whether that means making a donation or contributing in some other way. And then we have the influencer marketing tool, which makes it easy to kind of track how your partners and your influencers are contributing to your efforts, and lots more. So drop a 1 if you are interested in having that kind of personalized conversation with a Feathr expert to see, what kind of strategy you can set up for your org to reach younger donors and do much more. So see some 1s coming in, keep dropping 1s. And if you are a Feathr user already and you just want to connect with your customer success manager to kind of talk about reaching younger donors, or you have any other questions, feel free to drop a 2. So if you're not a Feathr user, you're new here, drop a 1 and we'll hook you up with the demo. drop a 2 if you are a user and you want to talk to us. Okay. I'm glad this was helpful. Thanks for the feedback, guys. I'm just going to quickly see if there are any questions I could easily answer. Okay, I see you guys asking a lot of questions to each other and responding, which is my favorite. Monica, I see your question about the magazine that's lengthy and costly that are mailed out. I don't have a specific answer for you. I think, if you find that it works, like if you find that that magazine results in high donation amounts or frequent donations from the people you're sending it to, and that works for your budget, there's no need to stop. But if you do feel like it's a high cost initiative and it's not resulting in the kind of donations you want to be bringing in or the kind of engagement, I don't know what else is included in the magazine, but email newsletters are obviously a common practice now. So if you're able to kind of communicate, a lot of that through email newsletters, that can be a way to kind of cut the cost of a heavy, lengthy mailer. But definitely look at what works for your organization. And if it's, delivering on conversions and donations and things like that, no need to stop something that's working. But snail mail in general is becoming less common. And, again, older people are receptive to direct mail. I think younger people are much less likely to convert as a result of receiving a direct mail piece. I was actually talking to my colleague the other day about how, as millennials, we're not really used to receiving snail mail. And so every now and then it is kind of fun and refreshing to get a piece of mail. But I think don't expect younger people to convert from them. But it might be fun to send a thank you via mail, if you have the budget for that and you think it could be a nice way to engage people and try to get them to become a longer term donor. Because it is fun to open an envelope every now and then. Okay, let's see. Handshake is also a great place to find students for, I've never heard of Handshake, but that's great. If anyone didn't see that comment, there's a platform or website, I guess, called Handshake, where you can find students for hire or to be interns. So that sounds like a great place to start. Cool. Catch a Fire also was mentioned here as a place to find skill-based volunteers for things like marketing, website design, finance, HR in the nonprofit space. So that's cool. Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, so I will let you all go. But thank you so much for all the engagement in the chat. Thanks for joining today. I'm glad it was helpful. And I will, Miriam, your daughter's name is, Lisa's my daughter's name. Yeah, my name's Isabel. Love that. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for joining so much. Again, we'll be sending the recording, the slide deck out, and I'll try to get a few answers into some of the questions we didn't get to today. But yeah. Cameo, I do not have any insights on Cameo. I'm not going to lie, Robert. But I'm going to go look that up now myself. Go to TikTok and see what they have to say about Cameo. Cool. I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you all again so much. We will see you on the next one.